Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I know that there are some still trickling in, but just being mindful of time, we'll get started right here at 12 noon. So thank you for those that have joined us today. My name is Desiree Neufeld, and I'm one of the program managers with the Investment Agriculture Foundation. So I'll be leading you in the presentation today at noon. So this is the information session for the Food Security Emergency Planning and Preparedness Fund. So joining me today, we have Graham Knox, who is on the panel. So he is the Director of Emergency Management with the Ministry of Agriculture and Food. Graham will be supporting this presentation for any technical questions that should arise. So just know that there will be an opportunity for you to engage with both of us, depending on your needs and questions at the end of today's session. So I'd like to take a minute to first acknowledge the Lekwungen, Songhees, and Esquimalt peoples whose territory IAF stands, and the Lekwungen and WSÁNEĆ peoples whose historical relationships with the land continue to this day. To provide a general overview of the structure of today's call, this is a bit of an agenda on today's information session. So we'll start with just a short introduction on who IAF is for those that are unfamiliar with the foundation, and then provide more details on the Food Security Emergency Planning and Preparedness Fund. So we will cover who can apply, what types of activities are eligible through the program, specifically just a brief overview of eligible costs. And then, as I mentioned, we'll be ending the session with a Q&A period. So throughout the call, please feel free to submit your questions via the Q&A chat box. After the presentation, we'll do our best to address all questions that are brought forward. If we don't get the opportunity to respond to your questions, we will follow up directly by email. We will also be updating the Q&A portion of the program webpage. So if you aren't able to get or hear a response and say have to leave early, be sure to check out that resource. Also, just a general reminder to keep in mind that I will be reading the questions out loud. So please try to refrain from providing any confidential information or information that you wouldn't want to be shared with this larger group. So who is IAF? IAF, the Investment Agriculture Foundation, delivers programs and services to support a thriving agriculture and agri-food sector here in British Columbia. So we have over 25 years of experience. IAF is recognized as a leading provider of high quality and cost-effective program delivery services for the agriculture and agri-food sector in BC. And we've been operating, since 1996 and have delivered more than $250 million to industry on behalf of federal and provincial governments. So the topic of today's information session is the Food Security Emergency Planning and Preparedness Fund. This is an up to $20 million program that is funded through the government of British Columbia, specifically through the Ministry of Agriculture and Food, and delivered by IAF. The program itself is intended to support agricultural producers and industry associations, as well as local authorities, to develop emergency plans and preparedness strategies with a unique focus on food security and agricultural resiliency. So this investment looks like investments in training and proactive procurement of equipment or infrastructure in anticipation of emergency events. So as you'll see on the screen, the program objectives specifically aims to provide funding to preparedness-related projects that tangibly improve collaboration between local government emergency response programs and producers for high-risk hazards. So who is eligible to apply? To be considered eligible for the program, an applicant must be located in the province of British Columbia and meet the stream-specific eligibility requirements as defined here. So this particular program has two funding streams, the first of which focuses on planning. As displayed on the screen, this category is eligible to BC local governments, BC First Nations. That includes tribal councils and Indigenous communities that have emergency management responsibilities, BC Agriculture and Agri-Food Industry Associations, as well as BC Seafood Associations. The second stream, which is stream 2, as we'll call it, is for the preparedness, infrastructure, and equipment component. And this is focused or targeted towards those BC-based industry associations, with a note that individual producers and processors, although they are not eligible to apply through stream 2 funding, are encouraged to work with their industry groups to put forward a project that has a broader sector benefit or impact of the producers or processors themselves. The two other eligible applicant types in this category include primary processors, so those that have direct role in supporting agriculture. So this could be considered as abattoirs, and ancillary service providers. Some ineligible applicants, as I mentioned, are those individual producers and processors. Like I said, the exception is given towards primary processors involved in the initial processing of agricultural products, such as abattoirs for livestock and poultry. Non-agricultural groups are also not able to apply. We did mention that stream 1 is still eligible for those seafood associations, as well as BC and provincial and federal governments. The maximum funding amounts for activities and expenditures will vary by or within the two funding streams. Each funding stream has its own set cost share ratio as well as funding limits. So in stream 1 planning, the maximum eligible amount that a project can apply for is $150,000. This does exclude regional districts, which actually have a higher ceiling of $250,000 in funding available to them. And this would be with a 100% cost share ratio. So that means that 100% of the project costs can be paid for through the program. This is in opposition to stream 2, which does have a little bit of a different cost share ratio. So for individual businesses, this would be a 75% cost share, meaning that 25% of the project costs are overseen or paid for directly by that project lead or that project proponent. Industry associations still have 100% of costs covered, up to a maximum of $2 million. So what activities are eligible? The following two slides will go over a brief synopsis of the types of eligible costs that are available in stream 1 and stream 2, but I would encourage you to go to IAF's website for a comprehensive list, as well as project examples that can help define or contextualize some of these costs. So eligible costs can include the development of an agriculture association emergency plan in the event of emergency or hazard consequences, development of a local authority or First Nations agricultural emergency plan to support agricultural producers within their geographic area of jurisdiction, as well as the development and training of staff, volunteers, or contractors who will either play an active role or support that agriculture-related emergency plan. In stream 2, so this is the preparedness, infrastructure, and equipment funding stream, you can request funding for the procurement and installation of equipment or infrastructure related to supporting emergency response actions. The note that it does not include prevention and mitigation would fall more along the lines of those activities related to, for instance, plantings along water streams or other riparian ways that prevent a flooding instance per se, or other activities that actually try to mitigate as opposed to respond to the emergency event. The second bullet point will just show an eligible cost of upgrading existing equipment or infrastructure. And another example is the short-term operational costs associated with that equipment or infrastructure required to support emergency actions. And the note is, as this relates to the support of agriculture or agricultural operations. This screen will go over a brief list of ineligible activities and costs. So Crown Corporation activities or costs incurred prior to approval, prevention and mitigation projects, as I mentioned, and projects that are eligible for compensation under private insurance programs, such as agri-recovery. So some important dates to keep in mind throughout this application process. We are in the middle of the application intake that is taking place through IF's client portal. This intake launched on September 21st and will be seen through with applications submitted on an ongoing basis over a 90-day period through December 19th. So all applications will be reviewed and processed together following that intake closure on December 19th. Funding will be awarded based on the priorities provided by the Ministry of Agriculture and Food and available funds. It should be noted that if funding is not fully allocated through this first intake, a second application window may be considered. One note about retroactive costs is that we are considering retroactive costs through September 21st, leading up to the date of funding notification or decision to the applicant. However, all costs must be approved as part of your budget and eligible in the program guidelines to be reimbursed. Projects are expected to be completed by or before January 15th, 2026. So the application process, as I mentioned, is through IF's client portal. We do encourage you to take your time in moving through this multi-step process, the first of which is creating an account and registering your organization. Organization registration will require you to input name, contact details, BCID or CRA numbers, and have a 2 to 3 turnaround time in terms of processing to verify this information. The next step or last step would actually be to apply for the emergency funding through the online application. So this is after your organization has been registered and verified. You can submit your application for the emergency planning program. You would select food security emergency planning and preparedness from the list of funding opportunities, and the application form will walk you through various project details such as your start and end date, the funding stream that you are applying to, so either stream 1 or stream 2. You'll be asked to provide a description of your overall project activities, a budget as well, alignment with the program priorities, as well as demonstration of any environmental or technical regulatory standards or permits that are required to complete your project. Applicants are encouraged to provide supplementary materials in support of their applications, such as letters of support, quotes. These can be included as an appendix and uploaded through the IF client portal as attachments to your application submission. It should be noted that with the eligible cost of equipment, infrastructure, or other upgrades, if permits are pending or under review, but the application is otherwise complete, IF will process this application and consider it and adjudicate the application within the batch of applicants considered for funding. However, approval and actual receipt of program funds would be conditional to the submission of required documentation or those permits being approved to be eligible for reimbursement. So I would encourage you to visit the IAF website. We do have a client portal support section as well, which will provide tutorial videos on how to register and apply for the program. We also have a designated program inbox that you can reach out with any other content-related questions. As I mentioned, funding will be awarded based on designated funding priorities. So although the program itself is open to all eligible applicants, we have worked with the Ministry of Agriculture and Food to identify specific priorities for projects to be funded. The full prioritization list can be found on the program website at iafbc.ca/FSPP. Here I've just provided an overview of what is considered. So applications to both streams will be initially assigned a priority category based on the high risk, hazard, or consequence that they have identified in their application. So this high risk, consequence, or hazard can be something like wildfire or funding or whatever the emergency event is that you are looking to respond to or prepare for. And then the application will further be priority ranked based on whether or not the project is providing support to livestock or poultry species. And then there are other project and applicant specific criteria that will be considered. So for instance, in Stream 1, there's further prioritization if you are a BC local government or First Nations applying based on the number of livestock or poultry operations or other agricultural operations within your area of jurisdiction. And then primary processors or ancillary service providers applying under Stream 2 will be further ranked based on the type of support that they provide during an emergency event and the consequences thereof. It should be noted that when eligible applicants do rank equally with one another in these priority categories and subcategories, IAF may use additional considerations to award funding, such as whether or not the project prioritizes multiple high-risk hazards or provides benefit or support to multiple sectors or commodity groups. As I mentioned, full prioritization details as well as a comprehensive list of eligible costs and activities is available on the website, which is posted on the screen here. So that completes the brief overview of our program itself. We'll now move into the question and answer period, addressing any questions that have been received through the Q&A section or the Q&A chat. I see Graham has joined us, so thank you for that. We have a few questions at the onset. So I will start with a few first, and then Graham, for those that may be directed to you, I'll ask you to take over thereafter. So the first question is for BC-based industry associations, do they have to be provincial level associations or can they be regional associations, such as a Vancouver Island Cattlemen's Association, or are Farmers Institutes eligible? So industry associations can be regionally specific. I don't see any issue with that eligibility concern, provided the project itself fits within the general parameters of the program overall. I may look to Graham to speak to eligibility of Farmers Institutes, because that is something that we actually haven't discussed discreetly with the ministry.
Yeah, I would say we would encourage them to apply, based on their role and their support for memberships. As Desiree discussed, there's other prioritization criteria, so maybe good to partner up with other groups in that. But I think Farmers Institute should be eligible based on their role and their memberships. Yes.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So another question is, would fruit and berry farmers be eligible to apply for funding? So in this case, as Graham kind of alluded to, there are other priorities that are taken into consideration. So with berry and fruit farmers, the producers themselves aren't eligible to apply, but they can work with their industry associations to put forward a joint application. The same would be for other sectors or horticultural sectors. I would say that the caveat, as Graham alluded to, is that there's certain commodity types or those projects that focus on livestock and poultry that take precedence or priority for funding decision. However, that doesn't mean that if you are not eligible to apply and you're submitting an application or proposal with your industry group or association, that couldn't be brought forward for review. Graham, I will let you respond to any questions just as I'm reading the others that have come through to me directly. Oh, I believe you're on mute.
Sorry. Okay, so I see a question from Carolyn Teasdale for Stream 2. Are primary processors from horticultural sector eligible? So it'd be a very similar question response that Desiree just provided. It would have to be through an application of the industry association on behalf of those members.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
Would you like me to continue, or you're...
Yeah, you can continue. I had one more question just about ancillary service providers and joint applications with industry associations. So as Graham alluded to, there is strength in putting together a partner or joint application. The lead applicant would have to be eligible under the discrete list that is relevant to either Stream 1 planning or Stream 2 for infrastructure, but that wouldn't preclude an ancillary service provider from being a project partner that is considered in an application that's brought forward under Stream 1, for instance, if submitted by an industry association. Feel free to continue on with other questions as you have them, Graham.
Yes, so I see the next question there from Michael Fusca. Is the intent of this fund to support emergency planning for commercial producers only, or can it also be emergency planning for hobby farms and smallholders? The intent is around commercial producers, but I don't believe we've said that hobby farms, smallholders are ineligible. So if there is an association for those groups, then they would be eligible to apply.
Mm-hmm.
And then I see the next question from Breezy Webster. Will those in floodplains be approved? I think that would be largely based on the application itself and meeting the requirements. We haven't put any restrictions regarding being located in a particular hazard area or not. And then I see Simran Sandhu's question, can a local government use the funding to contract a third party to create a food security emergency plan for the local authority's jurisdiction? So I would say if all other eligibility requirements are met, the local government does not have to do the project themselves. They can do it with their own staff, with contractors, etc. So the use of contractors is permissible. The PowerPoint, so Cameron Gagog, sorry if I'm getting people's names mispronounced, but could you make this PowerPoint available to review? Desiree,
yep. So that's actually a great prompt. So a reminder for everyone that's listening now or will be, if we didn't get the same way that if we didn't get to answer your questions here, we will follow up, but a copy of the webinar, both recording, the transcript will be added to the emergency planning or Food Security Emergency Planning and Preparedness webpage after the event. So you can follow along or visit that webpage to see and revisit the information that was shared today.
Okay, and I see a next question in my list here from Keith Marshall asking, how does the program ensure First Nations, small and remote communities have access to funding for smaller projects? So it is based on the eligibility criteria and the prioritization criteria laid out. So depending on the volume and amounts requested in the applications vis-a-vis the maximum available funding, those applications would be evaluated against those criteria and approved accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
Next up from Corrine Roger Beresford, are there any recommended organizations or consultants that have emergency planning expertise? I think I won't provide an answer to that. Obviously, as a government official, I can't be endorsing particular companies, etc. But I think there's other resources out there and available that you can look for that sort of expertise and recommendations. Okay, next up, I see something from Marita Prato. We are a food-based nonprofit. We have presented to regional districts emergency planning department a mapping project that would assess food storage capacity in regional districts and First Nations across Vancouver Island, as well as looking at single points of failure for food distribution with interest in moving forward. Would this fit under phase one? It could fit under phase one. We'd have to, I think, look at the specifics there and make sure, it meets all the eligibility criteria. I'll pass it over to Desiree for any follow-up on that one.
I would say that the recommendation would be to submit a proposal provided you meet the eligibility requirements. There may be other funding programs that if it's in the implementation phase could be of value for you to look at. So I would encourage you to visit IF's website. However, if it is in the planning phase, I would say that Stream 1 would be most in alignment. So there is a question about can local government partners to increase the maximum or the funding maximum. So for instance, a local government municipality partners with a regional district, can they apply for 150 plus 250K? So the general response to this is just that there are funding limits per application or per project, which were displayed on the screen earlier. So this would be that 150K limit. It isn't to say that there couldn't be multiple applications submitted with a joint intent or execution. Graham, I don't know if you have anything to add to this, just as it relates to joint projects submitted by government partners.
So no change there in terms of so you could break that up and apply individually to change that total amount. And certainly the prioritization criteria do give added weight to applications where there's multiple parties applying together, serving broader good.
So there was a question about the prioritization criteria, specifically how high-risk hazards or consequences are defined. So there are a number of them that are discretely listed on the program webpage. As I mentioned, the complete prioritization criteria with the high-risk hazards such as flooding or wildfire are available on the website. So I'd encourage you to go there for that resource. The next question was, as a service provider to farmers, we want to help with the administration of an application as farmers don't have resources or time to do so. How can we do this? So this would, again, be dependent on the stream that you were looking to apply for. There are minimum eligibility requirements that have to be met to be eligible to apply for program funding. So in this case, if you are an eligible service provider applying to Stream 2, you could put forth a project with project partners that has maybe a broader reach or benefit. However, there is, and this will be detailed on the application form, limits to the administrative fees that you can include in your project budget. So the next question that has come through about was inquiring about what resources or support are available or provided through the fund to First Nations to develop and implement their emergency food security plans. So the program itself does not provide resources or support outside of just the intent to submit an application or project proposal. As Graham mentioned, there are ways to engage third-party service providers, consultants that have expertise and experience in particular areas that you could hire and include in your project costs for the intent of developing and implementing an emergency response or an emergency plan. So the next question that has come through is in reference to Stream 2. So this is the infrastructure stream. Specifically, when an association is applying on behalf of its members, are they allowed to distribute and decide how to share the funds? So Stream 2 will have a list of eligible costs that can be included in your project budget. This could be that, for instance, there's infrastructure or equipment purchases that are provided to members across multiple organizations or operations within your membership body. So that is up to you to include and detail that distribution of, for instance, what will be purchased or procured per the eligible activity and cost parameters. The program does require you to provide proof of payment invoicing as well to verify the eligibility of those costs. So I would encourage you to keep that in mind, that this is not meant to be funding to pay out or supplement operations of members, but there is a defined list of eligible costs and activities that can be considered with your membership group. So the next question is related to regional districts. So specifically under Stream 1, are we able to create a plan and then buy the necessary equipment required to implement this plan, all under funding for Stream 1? So this would constitute the submission of 2 applications. Ultimately, the emergency plan itself would have to be developed, which is the intent of Stream 1 first before it's actually implemented or supporting equipment is procured under Stream 2. So applicants are eligible to access funding provided they meet eligibility requirements across Stream 1 and Stream 2, but this might constitute the submission of 2 separate proposals. Graham, I don't know if you have anything to add on that side as how Stream 1 feeds into Stream 2, just for additional context or examples for those listening.
Sorry, I didn't quite, well.
It was just an applicant inquiry about accessing both Stream 1 and 2 funding and whether or not there's anything to keep in mind should those projects or proposals roll together, or they're looking to utilize both streams, funding in both streams.
No, I don't think I have anything to add. They'd just be evaluated based on those criteria as you've laid out.
Okay. So I see the questions are starting to slow down. So as a reminder, we will be reaching out directly if your question has not been answered. A copy of the webinar and transcript will be shared on the program webpage. You can also reach out to us directly, the programs team, after this session through the email fspp@iafbc.ca. And the FAQ portion of the webpage will also be updated. I think that we have one last question, so I'll answer this and then leave the floor open for Graham for any closing comments. So will all grants be evaluated and awarded after the December 19th due date, or will they be evaluated as they are received? So this, as I mentioned in this session, the submission of your application can take place between now and December 19th. However, only after December 19th will the applications be reviewed in a group and reviewed against the priority criteria or the prioritization criteria, which will determine the allocation of funding across projects to those priority groups as applicable. So the application forms themselves can be accessed through the website. You will be submitting that through IAF's client portal, and that will be an online application form, which is also detailed on the website. Now, Graham, any closing remarks on your behalf or that of the ministries?
I would just like to thank folks for participating today. We're really fortunate to be in the position to provide this funding, and really look forward to seeing some wonderful applications and improving the ability of agriculture, First Nations, local authorities to work together and better support agriculture and their communities when bad things happen. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Appreciate that synopsis, Graham. Thank you for your time, and thank you as well for those that joined us today. You have your avenues to reach out, so please don't hesitate to follow up with any questions, or find us online on the program webpage, which will be updated as well with information from today. On that note, I'll bid everyone a great Wednesday afternoon, and look forward to seeing your project proposals come in as they are submitted.